A very good day to everyone. It is a pleasure to speak at the Hawaii International Conference on Systems Science and in the workshop organized by the University of Stuttgart on integrative development of sustainable systems. My focus today would be on the criticality of getting the framework conditions right for any specific systems transformations that we may aspire for. What I will be presenting to you today is the outcome of a joint initiative that IIASA had taken with the International Science Council last year when we were responding to the first wave of COVID-19. We recognized at the time that the pandemic, for all the chaos and misery it caused, also provided a small window of opportunity to better address the other major crisis looming on humanity, that is climate change. The response to the pandemic forced us to transform our ways of life, which we had believed would be extremely difficult and non-negotiable by some. It forced us to innovate our economic and social models in a manner that would allow the economies to function. It also highlighted for us the need to urgently build resilience across all segments of the population, so as to be able to better respond to the unknowns, both known and unknown, that we will have to deal with in a world that is grappling with imminent catastrophic climate change events. In other words, the focus on Agenda 2030 cannot be lost. The recommendations from this initiative arose from a trans and interdisciplinary community of experts that enabled us to rapidly bridge scientific knowledge gaps by building on the experience and expertise of other systemic actors. We picked for our analysis 4 themes, 2 overarching ones on governance and science systems, and 2 sectoral themes of food and energy, and were quite surprised at the convergence of recommendations from each of these 4 themes. Across the themes, experts express the emergence of often unprecedented systemic stresses that are facing that are bringing unmanageable stress on governance systems. While emphasizing the need for urgently ramping up preparedness based on scientific simulations, a key recommendation centered around strengthening the national disaster management institutions to play a larger role in also analyzing systemic risks and recommending appropriate response measures at both institutional and resilience building levels. The criticality of ensuring agile, reliable, and relevant science was emphasized through the deliberations. The second key recommendation focused on repurposing and redesigning global institutions for the complexities of the 21st century. These center around the global challenges of COVID-19, climate change, biodiversity, poverty, alleviation, etc., characterized by interconnectedness, but at the same time being handled by an international system based on specialized agencies, treaties, and conventions with little coordination and growing competition for resources. This is increasingly unfit to respond to today's interconnected problems. So what we need is a shift towards more integrated and adaptive processes for cooperatively addressing global issues. We need to strengthen science policy society interfaces for more evidence-based participatory decision-making, and build accountability and transparency provisions into more integrated, inclusive governance arrangements. We also need to cooperate in mission-oriented ways to drive action in multi-stakeholder communities of practice. And we can achieve this by reforming, reconfiguring, and repurposing global institutions to enhance outcome-oriented global governance in an ever riskier world. Addressing vulnerability and building resilience create multiple dividends. Failure to invest in these reduces our collective capacity across countries and across generations, to thrive and cope with crises. We therefore need to ensure shorter-term COVID-19 recovery packages integrate sustained investments into SDGs and SDG-wide resilience and lead to longer-term transformations to build forward rather than back. We need to devise science-based tracking mechanisms, assessing the alignment of the green fiscal recovery packages with the SDGs and systemic resilience. And we need to do this by making systemic resilience a core government priority, by moving it to the center of government, and from moving from a risk management approach to greater resilience. The need for agility in both creation of knowledge as well as implementable systemic solutions emphasizes and gives new meaning to the oft-repeated refrain of enhancing partnerships. These partnerships must also include partnerships within the science community, which is still often found wanting in being able to provide systemic and practical solutions, and definitely include the private sector, which is increasingly engaged in the generation of new knowledge, apart from its role in driving transformative change. While emphasizing the role of science in both informing COVID management responses and enhancing governance responses, it is widely recognized that when it comes to relying on science to define transformative changes, decision makers are loath to embrace the same. Overcoming this shortcoming would, of course, need the partnerships mentioned earlier, but must also be driven by adequate support from science systems, the research agenda setting process, research funding, incentives for career progression, etc. It is also clear that both from the point of view of finding systemic solutions and for trust building, science has to be both inclusive and accessible. The importance of this was emphasized clearly by the participant survey that was undertaken as part of the initiative. The x-axis in this chart presents a relevance score of attributes that would make science more effective, whereas the y-axis presents the share of scores for each of these attributes. And as can be seen in this chart, the greater emphasis has been on scientific integrity, on access to research data, results, and publications, and fact-checking and dealing with misinformations. Basically, a number of actions that would go towards enhancing the trust in science and increasing the effectiveness of science communication. In sum, the thematic group dealing with science systems identified 5 interrelated transformative changes that need to be effected. We need to increase the capacity of science systems to respond rapidly to crises with high quality research. We need to strengthen transdisciplinary research and networking on critical risks and systems resilience. We need to enhance knowledge diffusion within science systems, improve the quality and efficacy of science policy interface at all levels, and enhance communication of scientific knowledge, public understanding, and trust in science. Continued globalization must follow a very conscious path with a robust understanding of local implications and opportunities. Solutions lie in consuming sectors. We need to reinvent urban spaces, infrastructure, and mobility through compact urban development with reduced car dependency, through an urban design that sets conscious priorities in terms of space for transport, space for sustainability, and space for innovation, economic activity, and social interaction. We also need to pursue low carbon built environment, which means we redefine the material foundation of buildings and infrastructure to make them less resource intensive, flexible, and resilient, and retrofit existing ones with technologies that can transform them to close to net zero emissions. A new consciousness is obviously pervading society. We need to harness the power of collective behavior and redirect it from excessive consumption to sufficiency. Energy resilience and contextualization are the keys. We need to design efficient, green, decentralized, and locally resourced energy systems. Going forward, we need to adopt a new mantra for development, which is sustainable and resilient. We cannot be designing a new sustainable future which continues with the growing inequalities and extreme vulnerabilities that we have experienced in the past. These continued inequalities are leading to societal tipping points and have to be urgently addressed. We've already referenced the need to harness the new consciousness in society. This has to be done through the use of science-based policies so as to encourage accelerated lifestyle changes towards sustainability. We have also seen the power of remote functioning, although there is a continued pushback and almost romantic desire to go back to the old ways of functioning, which are looking increasingly difficult. And demand reduction, not just on energy, but across all sectors of consumption, is something that needs to be pursued. However, in the case of energy demand reduction, we could possibly consider introducing this as a new target under SDG 7. In summary, what this initiative has revealed is that we live in a non-linear, complex world of interdependence. And we experience frequent conflict between natural and human systems. This pandemic has created a warning for us. It is also a harbinger of more pressures which are to come on human societies from other events, particularly climate change that we spoke about. So we need to become better prepared for and more resilient to future economic shocks. We need decisive individual action, which can also lead to a new collective consciousness. And also a global citizenship that ensures a just and equitable global society. Through following all of these kinds of measures, the framework conditions that I'm talking about, we can hope to also support integrative development of sustainable systems in specific other sectors of the economy. Thank you very much.